Good to see everybody again this afternoon. Hope you've had a absolutely blessed and wonderful day. Our Bible class, I wanted to start off by telling y'all, I guess, a little bit of something that I've come to learn, I guess, with age. And sometimes things happen and you do not realize it at the time. I remember that my family and I, we were living in Pennsylvania. And as most of you probably know, Pennsylvania is not exactly known for Christianity the way that we view Christianity here, even in the Bible Belt, but is predominantly Catholic. And I remember sitting in church one Wednesday night, and the preacher who was there, he gets up and he lets everybody know that he had been working with a prison ministry, and he had converted a young man, and he wanted everyone to understand that he did not have the same appearance as most people in the church congregation. He informed everybody that he had tattoos all up and down his arms, that just his appearance was not what you would necessarily expect to see in a church. Well, that Sunday came around and the young man showed up. And the young man showed up and he was wearing what we commonly refer to as the old wife beater shirts, the little old white shirts, almost looks like a tank top for guys. He had tattoos up and down his arms. He sat at the back of the church, was real quiet. Well, that Sunday went away, and then that Wednesday he was there. And then that next Sunday he was there, Sunday morning, Sunday night. It didn't take people in the church very long to figure out that this young man's heart was much more in the right place than a lot of the people who were going there. As a matter of fact, anytime the church doors were open, he was there. And when it came to volunteering for anything to the church, he'd volunteer. He did anything and everything he could to help. But you see, there was a little bit of an issue with the young man. He was out of prison at this particular point in time, but he had certain drug offenses and was going to have to go back. And you know how people are in the church. Most people said, well, if he goes back, chances are he'll go back to the way he was living. And for time's sake, I won't say the young man's name. But when he went back, and speaking of which, the judge even said that he had never seen a more reformed person in his life. But the law was the law, and he had to go back. And the young man actually agreed with the judge. And when he went back, he started a prison ministry himself and wound up converting over 500 people in the time that he was there. I tell you this to remind people sometimes that just because, whether it's something you're dealing with yourself or somebody that you may be dealing with, whether it's work related or anything of that nature, sometimes who somebody was is not who they are now. A prime example of that is Apostle Paul. Just because at one time Paul was not somebody who you would consider a Christian's friend, if anything, he was the enemy to the church. But you see, Paul changed. And a lot of times people forget, and even in Paul's changing, there was a period of time right after his conversion where the Jews had disowned him and the Christians were scared of him. In other words, a change in somebody's life a lot of times means a change in many different ways, whether it's families and relationships, and it's a hard thing to go through. And sometimes it's a really tough thing to go through. And each and every person, some of us more blessed than others, have had to deal with change and things that did not seem to go as we would have wanted them to. But when it comes to Christianity, it's important to remember that each and every person has a soul. And that soul is important to God and thus should be important to us. And each and every person, sometimes despite appearances and maybe preconceived notions, sometimes each and every person has more value in them for the Lord's church than even we realize. You look at Lee, and you would have seen somebody who was just a drug dealer. But you look at the impact that he had, and you look at somebody like Saul. Saul was known as a person who hunted down Christians, but look at all of the good that he did. So what I want us to think about a little bit this Wednesday is just real simple. When we go out through our lives, for us to remember that even people that we're working with or the people that are around us, that they, when it comes to serving God, I guess is the best way to put it, they have a lot more in them than a lot of times than they even realize. And a lot of times we become their worst enemy by telling them that they can't or they're not. I hope everybody has a wonderful and blessed Wednesday, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.